Imagine waking up tomorrow and everything is gone. Not gone like a storm passed through. Gone. Like the governments collapsed, the rivers dried up, the soil turned to poison, and the sky filled with ash. Gone like your children will never know what a supermarket was. Gone like the word tomorrow barely means anything anymore. That is the world of Mad Max. And in that world, that scorched, savage, dying world, 3 settlements rose from the wreckage, not to save humanity, not to rebuild civilization, but to control it. Today on Learning Lore, we are going deep into the Wasteland. We are going to break down exactly how these settlements work, who built them, who they crush, and why the entire world of Mad Max Fury Road balances on a knife edge between order and annihilation. Welcome to the world that Joe built. The world of Mad Max did not end overnight. It died slowly, and the way it died tells you everything about the world that came after. It started with oil. The world's petroleum reserves began running dry, and instead of adapting, nations went to war. These became known in the franchise's lore as the Oil Wars, or the Fuel Wars. Countries that built their entire economies on fossil fuels watched the foundation crumble and reached for weapons instead of solutions. But fuel wars became water wars. Environmental collapse accelerated. Farmland died. Rivers dried. And suddenly, the most basic substance on Earth, water, became the most dangerous commodity in the world. People were not fighting over luxury anymore. They were fighting over survival itself. And then, the last blow came. Nuclear exchange. In the Mad Max universe, this event is called the Pox-Eclipse, a haunting name. Part pox, as in plague and disease, and part eclipse, as in the blinding flash of detonation, followed by the nuclear winter that strangled out the sun. The Pox-Eclipse did not just kill people, it poisoned the earth. It contaminated the soil and the groundwater. It flooded the atmosphere with ash and radiation. It sentenced future generations to be born sick, tumors in their bodies before they could walk. This is why the war boys, the soldiers of Immortan Joe, are called half-lives, because that is exactly what they are. People born dying, living on borrowed time. Their bodies already surrendering to the damage the Pox-Eclipse did to the gene pool. In Fury Road, there is a character called Miss Giddy, the keeper of history for Immortan Joe's captive wives. She has the history of humanity's self-destruction tattooed on her body, not in books, not on screens, on her skin. Because in this world, books rot, screens go dark, but a body carries its stories everywhere it goes. By the time of Fury Road, civilization has been gone so long that children born into the wasteland have never known anything else. They do not know what a hospital was, or a government, or a grocery store. Their entire world is water, fuel, and bullets, and 3 men figured out how to control all 3. The Citadel. If there is one image that defines the world of Mad Max Fury Road, it is this: a towering natural rock formation, rising from the desert floor like a monument to everything the wasteland could never touch. And underneath it, hidden deep in the earth, almost a whisper, water. A deep earth aquifer, an underground reservoir of clean water that survived the apocalypse. The oil wars destroyed the surface, the Pox-Eclipse poisoned the soil. But this water, sealed beneath the rock, was protected from all of it. Whoever controlled that water, controlled everything. And a man named Colonel Joe Moore knew it. Before the wasteland had gods, it had soldiers. And Joe Moore was one of the best, a decorated military officer who served through the oil wars and water wars, a strategic genius who watched the world burn around him while he kept winning battles that no longer had any meaning. When the final collapse came and the governments dissolved, Joe Moore did not wait to be saved. He started building. He gathered survivors, his soldiers, other men who had nothing left to lose, and began raiding and consolidating power across the wasteland. With military discipline, tactical skill, and the sheer force of his will, he grew. And when he finally set his eyes on the Citadel, a place others had tried and failed to conquer, he attacked. The battle was brutal. During the fighting, Joe Moore was believed to have been killed, and then he walked out of the smoke, alive. His followers did not see a soldier who got lucky. They saw something else, something that could not be killed, something divine. In that moment, Colonel Joe Moore died, and Immortan Joe was born. He had survived what should have killed him. In a world without miracles, he became the miracle, and he was wise enough, or ruthless enough, to immediately build a religion around that moment. Here is something that seems small but is actually everything. Immortan Joe gave his water a name. He called it Aqua Cola. Think about that for a moment. In a world where water is the rarest, most precious thing alive, he branded it. He gave it a product name, like a corporation, because that is exactly what he was building. Not just a kingdom, but a corporation of survival, where he was the sole supplier of the product you cannot live without. The Citadel's aquifer could sustain everyone beneath it. The water supply is vast, but Joe releases it in brief theatrical bursts, torrents of water for 30 seconds, then gone. And as the crowds scream and scramble in the mud, he watches from above and delivers his sermon. Do not, my friends, become addicted to water. It will take hold of you, and you will resent its absence. This is not generosity, this is control. He is training an entire population to be grateful for scraps, to associate his name with the gift of life itself, to experience water as a miracle, not a rite. The water dump is not just resource distribution, it is a religious ceremony, and Immortan Joe is the high priest. Water is not the only thing produced inside the Citadel's rock. Deep in the lower levels, Immortan Joe keeps what the film calls the milking mothers. Captive women, hooked to milking machines, harvested for breast milk the way you would harvest any other livestock. It sounds brutal, because it is brutal, but in the logic of the Wasteland, breast milk is extraordinarily valuable, rich in protein and nutrition, in a world where proper food barely exists, and to maintain lactation, the milking mothers are given a haunting detail. They carry baby dolls, because the act of holding an infant triggers the hormonal response that keeps production going. The Wasteland has turned motherhood into an assembly line. But high above those lower chambers, something remarkable exists. The hanging gardens of the Citadel. Using the aquifer's water, Immortan Joe maintains protected growing spaces, producing actual crops in a world where nothing grows. Fruits, vegetables, living things. This serves 3 purposes. It feeds the Citadel's inner circle, it supplements trade with the other settlements, and perhaps most importantly, it proves Joe's divinity. He can make things grow in a dead world. That is not just power, that is God-level power. The Citadel's society is built like the rock itself, vertical. The higher you are, the closer to Joe. The lower you are, the closer to nothing. At the very top, Immortan Joe himself, old, physically broken. Radiation illness has ravaged his body. His breathing apparatus keeps his failing lungs working, and under the translucent breastplate he wears, you can see tumors and lesions covering his torso. But he shows that body on purpose. The message, a god who absorbs this much suffering and still rules, that is not weakness, that is divine endurance. Below Joe are the imperators, his generals, and below them, the war boys. The war boys are the soul of the Citadel, recruited as children from the desperate masses below, indoctrinated from infancy into a death cult that turns their short, painful lives into sacred purpose. They paint themselves white, using chalk dust from the Citadel's own rock. They literally wear their home on their skin. They worship the V8 engine as a deity. They believe that if they die gloriously in battle, they will ride eternal, shiny and chrome, in Valhalla, an afterlife of perpetual speed and glory. Before a suicidal charge, a warboy will spray chrome paint directly into his mouth, across his lips, into his lungs. This is not just ritual. Chrome spray is a narcotic. It induces euphoria, suppresses fear, and makes the approaching death feel like rapture. It is a last prayer and a suicide drug at the same time. And before they go, they call out to each other, "Witness me."
No!
Witness
These are boys raised to be expendable, raised to be anonymous, raised to be used. The one thing they want, the one thing that costs nothing and means everything, is to be seen, to have someone witness them in their moment of sacrifice. If a war boy is witnessed when he dies, he is validated. His sacrifice meant something. He gets to Valhalla. That is the entire transaction. Joe gets a soldier who will die with a smile. The war boy gets 30 seconds of being real. And at the very bottom of it all, the wretched, the nameless masses who crowd beneath the rock, starving, deceased, irradiated. They hold up their hands toward the water gates, and they wait. Every war boy in that white-painted army was once a child standing in that crowd. Without them watching, the water dump is just logistics. With them watching, it is a sermon. Their desperation is the raw material that makes Immortan Joe's godhood possible. If the Citadel is the heart of Joe's empire, pumping water like blood through the wasteland, then Gastown is the lungs. And without the lungs, the heart stops. Gastown is exactly what it sounds like. A town built around gas, an oil refinery and fuel processing settlement, the source of the Guzzoline that powers every vehicle in the wasteland. Without Guzzoline, the war rigs do not run. The war parties cannot mobilize. The entire vehicle-based military and trade structure that Joe built collapses. No fuel means no power. In the wasteland, movement is survival. Stop moving, and the world eats you alive. Gastown is managed by a man the film simply calls the People Eater, and I want you to notice something about him immediately. He is fat. In a world where people are literally starving to death at the base of the Citadel, where the wretched look like walking skeletons, the People Eater is obese. Noticeably, dramatically obese. That is not an accident. That is a power statement. In the wasteland, body fat is proof that you have access to food that others do not. It is wealth made flesh. It is dominance you can see. The People Eater is not a warrior. He wins battles with logistics. He is a cold bureaucratic calculator who views other people as resources to be consumed. And by keeping the fuel flowing, he made himself impossible to replace. But Gastown was not always this orderly. The 2024 film Furiosa shows us exactly what happens when a raider tries to run a factory. Before the People Eater solidified his control, a warlord named Dementus swept through the region with his massive biker horde and seized Gastown by force. Dementus is one of the most fascinating characters in the franchise, because he is not pure evil. He is broken. He lost his children in the apocalypse, and he carries their memory in the form of a stuffed teddy bear strapped to his chest like a talisman. He is grief weaponized into megalomania, but Dementus has no idea how to run a refinery. He is a raider. He knows how to take things, not sustain them. Under his management, Gastown falls apart. Fuel production drops dramatically. It is one of the great ironies of the wasteland. The man powerful enough to conquer Gastown is precisely the wrong man to run it. After Dementus is eventually defeated, the People Eater assumes full control. Order returns. The machines start running again. The fuel flows. The relationship between Gastown and the Citadel is a mutual hostage situation, dressed up as an alliance. Gastown sends Guzzoline to the Citadel. The Citadel sends Aqua back. Neither can survive without the other. But water is more essential than fuel. You can walk somewhere. You cannot survive without water. The alliance is stable, but it is not equal, and everyone at the table knows it. And then there is the third point of the triangle, the bullet farm. If water is life and fuel is movement, then bullets are authority. The bullet farm is a lead mine and ammunition manufacturing facility, the wasteland's arsenal. Without the bullet farm, the war boys have spears and swords, impressive in their own right. But when you are trying to maintain dominance over a lawless wasteland full of desperate people, you need guns. The bullet farm is controlled by a man called simply the Bullet Farmer. Where the People Eater is cold and calculating, the Bullet Farmer is hot. a true believer in firepower and violence, a former military officer who served alongside Joe Moore during the Resource Wars. He did not become a bureaucrat after civilization fell. He became exactly what his name says. There is a moment in Fury Road that tells you everything you need to know about this man. During a nighttime battle, the bullet farmer is shot in both eyes by Furiosa. He is blind. He cannot see a single thing. He keeps firing, not panicking, not retreating, laughing, pouring gunfire into the darkness in every direction, joyful, ecstatic, completely unhinged. The guns are his religion. That is his Valhalla. The bullet farm receives water from the Citadel and fuel from Gastown. In return, it keeps both armed. What the bullet farmer offers is military solidarity, the certainty that when Joe calls, the bullet farm comes. And in Fury Road, when Furiosa defects and steals the wives, the bullet farmer personally leads his forces into the field to prove that covenant. That settlement that was not there anymore, the green place of many mothers. This is arguably the most important location in Fury Road, because it is the one place that represents everything the Wasteland destroyed. It is the ghost that haunts the entire film. And in the 2024 prequel Furiosa, we finally see it alive for the first time. It was beautiful. A hidden, fertile oasis in the heart of the Wasteland, fed by surviving water sources, protected by geography, tended with extraordinary care. A genuine community of life in a world that had given up on life. And it was home to a tribe called the Vuvalini, the many mothers. The Vuvalini were a matriarchal tribe, a society built around women, governance, combat, leadership, all the province of women. They were not just warriors, they were preservationists. They maintained literacy in a world that had forgotten how to read. They kept agricultural knowledge alive. They carried the intellectual and cultural heritage of the pre-collapse world alongside their weapons and their seeds. They were, in a very real sense, the librarians of the apocalypse, keeping the knowledge of how the world worked alive, long after the world had stopped working. By the time of Fury Road, the tribe has been reduced to a small group of elderly women wandering the wasteland, the last of the many mothers, a remnant of what was once something extraordinary. The green place died the same way everything dies in this world, slowly, and from the inside. The soil turned sour, poisoned over decades by the same toxins and radiation that corrupted everything else after the Pox-Eclipse. You cannot see radiation. You cannot smell it. You just notice one day that the seeds are not sprouting, that the water tastes wrong, that the animals are sick. The lush land rotted into a toxic swamp, black, fetid, dead. The people who stayed became the crowfishers, walking on stilts through the poisoned mud, hunting for whatever scraps remained in the ruined water. The Vuvalini left rather than die there slowly. They became nomads, wandering the wasteland, carrying the one thing they could save, the seeds. The Vuvalini's most sacred possession, a cache of heirloom seeds, maintained by a woman they call the Keeper of the Seeds. In a burlap satchel, barely the size of a backpack, every plant, tree, and flower that once grew in the green place, the complete biological blueprint of a living world, preserved through the apocalypse by human hands. The Keeper plants seeds wherever she can as they wander, pushes them into the earth with hope. They do not grow. The soil is still sour, nothing grows, but she keeps carrying them. When the Keeper is killed during Fury Road, it is the Dag, one of the 5 wives, who reaches down and picks up the seed bag. The torch passes. The next generation inherits the hope. They do not know if the seeds will ever grow, but they carry them anyway. And here is the thread that ties everything together. Furiosa is a child of the green place, a Vuvalini girl, kidnapped as a child by the very warlord Dementus, who would later seize Gastown and reshape Joe's empire. Her mother, Mary Jo Bassa, was a warrior of the Vuvalini. She pursued the kidnappers across the wasteland, reached her daughter briefly, was captured, and then spent her remaining time being tortured by Dementus for the location of the green place. She died without giving it up. Before her death, Mary Jo pressed a single peach seed into her daughter's hand, a seed from the green place, from home, from the world that existed before all of this. Furiosa carried that seed for years, through her induction into the Citadel, through her rise to Imperator, to everything Joe put her through, a tiny piece of the place she came from, and the reason she was going back. When she finally reaches what remains of the green place, when she stands in the poisoned swamp and understands that it is gone, quiet, still, she came all this way, and there is nothing left. But here is what the film leaves us with. At the end of Fury Road, when Furiosa returns to the Citadel, and the people seize their freedom, the water gates open and do not close. The water falls freely, and somewhere in the Citadel's hanging gardens, the seeds the Vuvalini carried through decades of wandering can finally find good soil. The Citadel does not just change hands, it becomes the new green place. Let's zoom out for a moment and look at what Immortan Joe actually built, because it is easy to see him as just a tyrant, a cult leader with a cool mask. But what he engineered is genuinely remarkable as a feat of post-apocalyptic statecraft. He identified 3 critical resources: water, fuel, and ammunition. He placed loyal men in control of each one. He created a 3-way trade loop, each settlement supplying what the others need, each one dependent on the others for survival. The Citadel sends water to Gastown and the Bullet Farm. Gastown sends fuel to the Citadel and the Bullet Farm. The Bullet Farm sends ammunition to the Citadel and Gastown. None of these settlements can survive without the other 2, which means none of them have any incentive to betray the alliance. Joe did not just build an empire, he built a system of mutual dependency, the most stable kind of empire there is, and at the center of it all, the water, which only he controls. But systems have cracks. Joe's sons are inadequate. His body is failing. His need for an heir is the one vulnerability he cannot engineer away, and in his desperation to produce that heir, he kept 5 women against their will. 5 women who, the moment a single person gave them an opening, ran, and that running broke everything. The events of Fury Road are not just an action movie. They are the story of what happens when the one human element that cannot be controlled, the refusal of a human being to accept their chains, meets the most carefully constructed system of control in the Wasteland, and the system loses. The world of Mad Max Fury Road is, at its heart, a story about what people do when the world takes everything from them. Some people, like Immortan Joe, look at the ruin and see an opportunity to dominate, to become the god of the wreckage. Some people, like the Vuvalini, look at the ruin and decide to preserve, to carry the seeds of something better for as long as it takes. And some people, like Furiosa, like Max, look at the ruin and decide to refuse, to say this is not all there is, this cannot be all there is. The settlements of the Wasteland are more than just locations on a map. They are philosophies, ways of surviving, ways of controlling, ways of hoping. And understanding them makes Fury Road more than just one of the greatest action films ever made. It makes it a myth. A fable for our time. Water, fuel, bullets, seeds. What do you control? This has been Learning Lore. If this deep dive into the Wasteland hit different, drop a like. It genuinely helps more people find the channel. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into the worlds that shaped us, and leave a comment. What universe do you want to explore next? There are 1,000 worlds to learn. Let's go find them.